Welcome, welcome, welcome. Long time in the making. My name is Miss K. This podcast is called P.A.R.T, P-A-R-T. That stands for Post Addiction Recovery and Transitioning. As you can guess, this podcast is about addiction. Addiction is a very near and dear topic to me. I am a recovering addict myself. I struggled from alcoholism and substance abuse. My substance of choice was marijuana. So I realized that the more people I meet, the more people I speak to, it's it's a common problem. A lot of people are ashamed, embarrassed that they're battling this disease, and that's exactly what it is. It's a disease. So the more people I spoke to, I realized that it's really important that I help other people. So I wanted to start this podcast not just for myself, not to benefit myself, but to benefit others. I realized that there were so many things in my recovery that I learned from listening to others and speaking to others and meeting new people. And I just wanted to share that love with other people. If you have never been an addict, it's something. It's something. It's very difficult to get out of, but it's not impossible. It's not impossible. So I just wanted to take, my time out of my life to encourage others to push forward and to try to fight through it because it's not over and you're more than capable of making it happen. So with that being said, I just want to tell you a little bit about myself. I am from upstate New York originally, but I now reside in North Carolina. I am the youngest of five siblings, four older brothers. Lucky me. But, I grew up with my mom in the household and a stepfather in the household. And unfortunately, this young man was very evil. He was not a friendly person. He instilled fear in us from the time I could remember. He also struggled from alcoholism. But a young mind like that at that point in my life, I didn't really grasp and understand the magnitude of alcoholism. I know that when I went to school, there was the DARE program, and I was taught, to be against drugs and alcohol. So I really didn't understand what it was to be an alcoholic. I did realize watching him that, his behavior was volatile. You never knew what to expect from him from day to day. So it was really important to me that I paid attention to those things. I always told myself that I would never turn out in that fashion. And I watched him just be a very mean person. He was extremely, extremely monstrous at times. He was very harmful to others. He had no regard for anyone's feelings, let alone their life. Um, it wasn't something that he cared about. He could care less. And so, growing up in a household like that, it was extremely tough. There was fond memories I had, wonderful memories I had with my siblings and my mother, and things that we did, and going to the beach, and going fishing every Sunday. And then there was those not so fond memories, those dark memories of just being downright afraid, feeling unsafe, feeling as if I had nowhere to turn and no one to protect me. My mother was a hardworking mother, just like, a lot of people have experienced. And so she would work multiple jobs to make the ends meet. My brothers were old enough and they were males. So obviously, they had a little bit more leeway than I did. So I spent a lot of time in my house. And unfortunately, that left me to the wolf, as they would put it. There was times that he would wait until no one else was around, and he would find that as an opportunity to mentally or physically abuse me. And I didn't tell anybody. I didn't tell a soul. I remember very early on having a diary and writing down some of the things that I was going through because I just felt like I had no one to turn to. And as time got on, I started to rely on my spirituality. Even though I was young, my mother had always raised us to be in the church 6, 7 days a week. And I know some of you all know what I'm talking about. But every single day I was in the church, or we had choir rehearsal or some type of rehearsal. So my mother kept us in the church. And at the time when I was young, I did not understand. I was like, wait a minute, can we do something else, please? Anything else, please? But as I grew older, I thank God for her doing that because that instilled things in me that I carry to this day. And as I went through my trials and tribulations through my childhood, I relied heavily upon God to help me and get through those situations. So it was critical to me that I found some other way to put off these feelings that I was experiencing. There was times where he would just threaten my life. There was times that he would threaten my siblings' lives. He would talk about causing harm to us, just harming our animals. We had several animals that we never saw again, and they went on a walk with him, and then we never saw them again. And I didn't put two and two together. Again, I was very young, so I didn't put two and two together at first. But as time went on and I became a young teen, I became an advocate. I told myself I couldn't do this anymore. I couldn't live in a household with someone who was just so violent. And I began to change in a different manner. Not the best manner, but in a different manner. I started to think about harming him and getting my family into safety. And I didn't know how I was going to do it, but I knew that I was going to do it. If my mother couldn't get us out of it or anybody else couldn't save us, it was going to have to be me. So I began to plot on how I was going to take this young man out, to say the least. And I thank God that at some point he must have spoken to my mother and said, it's time. It's time for you all to move. Because I was getting closer and closer to that day where I was ready to end his life. to put it frankly. I just couldn't take him abusing and hurting me and my siblings and my mother anymore. I couldn't take it anymore. And so thank God my mother uprooted us overnight, moved us to North Carolina, and I began to start my life over. So I thought. So I was around 15, 16 when I moved to North Carolina, and I got older and I felt like I was healing, and I spoke to my mother about some of the things that bothered me and that some things she didn't even know occurred. And I felt like I was moving forward in my life. But what I didn't know is I was just putting a Band-Aid on it. I was just wrapping it in gauze. I wasn't really dealing with what was going on inside. I had internalized everything from my childhood. I had just put everything deep down to the point where I believed that I was okay. So, of course, when I became of age to drink, I would drink here and there. Nothing at first, not really anything crazy. I was working in a restaurant, a high volume restaurant, and several of my peers would go out after night and have drinks. And so I just decided, okay, well, I'll go have drinks with them and we'll go have fun and relationship with, but it was here and there. And at the time I was in a relationship with someone I had been with for a year or 2 years. So I was really focused on my relationship more than hanging out with friends. But of course, eventually that changed. The more I hang out with these friends, I noticed how they were having a great time. They would come back with stories of things they did and how they had fun. And I wanted that. I wanted that. That was something I never really had in my life. I had lacked that for quite some time. Although I had, like I said, fond memories of my childhood, it had been a long time since I smiled and I was that happy. So I began to think that my happiness somehow could be related to this alcohol. So I would go out with my friends, I would drink. I started like distancing myself from my partner at the time. And my partner didn't drink. He never did like it. So eventually, of course, it caused a wedge to drive in between us. And he would just speak about it and speak about it and speak about it until he was blue in the face. And I would just tell him, hey, I'm in my 20s. I'm just enjoying life. You met me and I had just started drinking. So you can't change me. Like, that's not fair. And I just kept going with excuses. I didn't realize how much he despised alcoholism. Not me necessarily, but the alcohol. So the more I drink, the more that we separated. And again, the substance had a hold on me. I didn't even realize how bad it was. I didn't even get how upset he was. So I just kept drinking, kept drinking. So finally, eventually, he decided, you know what? I'm going to give her distance. In order to protect my heart, I'm going to stay away from her. And he didn't come home. He started to come home less and less and less. It was like once a week I would see him. And to be honest with you, it was okay with me. It was completely okay with me because I felt like, hey, that's okay. We're surviving. We're making it work. He's out there working hard. I'm out here working hard. Now come home for some drinks. I'm good. I'm taking care of myself. Then became pregnant. Well, that was the furthest from the truth. I then had my first child, and I knew I had to take a break from drinking, so I did. But after a few months, after I had my child, I went right back to drinking. Same thing happened with the second child. I quit drinking through my pregnancy. A few months after I had the baby, right back to drinking again. But again, I still didn't realize how bad it was. Still had no idea how bad it was. So as the wedge grew in between him and I, my children started to notice. And I was one of those high functioning alcoholics. I was one of those ones that had rules to my alcoholism. And I know some of you all are like that, where I said, oh no, I'm not drinking before sunset. I'm not going to drink around my children. I'm going to make sure they're in bed before I start drinking. And I had rules to it. But eventually, as you can imagine, those rules begin to slip. I started drinking earlier and earlier and earlier in the day. And the next thing I know, I'm having liquid lunches. Didn't really want to eat as much. As long as I had my drink, I was good. But it was taking its toll on me slowly but surely. And again, didn't even realize it. Did not even realize it. So the more I drank, the more my relationship fell apart. And my kids, I tried to protect them from it as much as possible. But then I realized that I was centering my life around alcohol. So I pick my kids up from Taekwondo and I go take them out for dinner, buy shots, get some beers. That was dinner all the time. If we went somewhere, I had to see if they sold alcohol. It turned into a bad situation. Eventually, in October of 2019, I got a DWI. And that was my rock bottom. That is where it really, really, really hurt. I was arrested in front of my children, and that broke my heart. I remember being in the back of the police vehicle and riding up to the jailhouse, and I had my Apple Watch on, and I received a text from my daughter that I'll never forget. She said, "Mommy, you're the greatest mommy in the world. You're just struggling right now. You're just struggling with something, but I don't love you any differently. I love you all the same, and we'll get through this together." And that encouragement was what I needed. That next day when I got out, I went to work, worked a double, had to put a smile on my face like nothing was going on, everything was cool. But on the inside, I was dying. I was dying. I was hurting emotionally. I was hurting physically. I felt like I had let everyone down. I had let myself down, my mother. I had let my spouse down, my children. I just felt like I had let everyone down. Everyone had this perfect picture of me, and here I was in shambles. So, of course, when you go into legal issues, they have programs that help support you and try to help you get better. And thank God for that. I ended up getting into an alcohol program that taught me a lot of things about myself. One of the requirements of the program was to get myself into therapy. So as I got into therapy and I spoke with this therapist, I realized that I had never dealt with the things from my childhood. I realized I had internalized everything, that I just swallowed it, but I never digested it. I never digested it. So it was there all along. I just was hiding it from everybody, including myself. So as I started to face the issues in therapy and speak about them, it was so crazy because I started getting sober. I was like telling myself that I couldn't drink anymore, that this was going to be over. And as I began my sobriety, my brain opened up like a flower. It just blossomed. And some of these ugly memories started coming back. All these things that I had buried for all these years started to resurface. And instead of coping by drinking, I decided, okay, you know what? I'm going to actually talk about this. I'm going to speak about this. I'm going to get this off my chest, and I'm going to relieve this burden. And so that's exactly what happened. The more I spoke about it, the better I felt. And it made it so much easier for me to get sober. So I decided February 17th, 2020, the fateful day. I woke up, I was hungover, and I said, I can't do this anymore. My kidneys was hurting. I remember like just feeling like my skin was on fire. I said, I cannot do this any longer. Um, I said, God, please. I prayed harder than I've ever prayed in my life. I said, please take this addiction out of my body because I'm not going to survive. I'm not going to survive if I don't stop now. And I woke up the next day, no urge in my body. And I'm not saying that's what's going to happen for everybody, but that's what happened for me. However, I still didn't think I was out of the clear, obviously, after one day. I continued to pray and I continued to take it second by second, minute by minute, then day by day, then week by week, then month by month. I just got better and better. But it required me to do some internal healing and to take a look at why I was drinking and consuming so much. What was causing me to struggle this bad? And it all stemmed from things that I hadn't dealt with, emotions that I hadn't dealt with, things that happened to me that stuck with me, and I needed to digest it. So I got sober February 17, 2020, and I decided to arm myself with as much knowledge as possible to get better and to remain sober. So I had my therapy sessions. I also had other classes I was taking. I was doing a lot of reading. I read articles. And I realized more and more as I listened to other people's stories, as I sat in these classes, that this is not a minimal thing. This is not a localized problem. This is a worldwide problem. Alcohol is glorified. Look at your commercials. Every 2 minutes of commercials like Corona, find your beach, or Michelob Ultra. You could work out and still drink this because it only has 6 calories, and Miller Lite has 7 calories but half the taste. You know, it's crazy how it's put in our face. It's put in our children's face. It's teaching people that, you know, this is how you enjoy your life. And that is the furthest from the truth. That's the furthest from the truth. Now, some of you all may be able to drink 1 or 2 drinks here or there. God bless you. I commend you. I have never been that person. I didn't know what a 1 drink maximum was. I knew what a 1 drink minimum was because I could keep going. My tolerance level just skyrocketed. And part of that was because alcoholism ran in my family. So that was important for me to find out as well through my studies is, you know, if you have a family history of it, you're already setting yourself up for failure. So you really have to be careful, you know, taking on substances when addiction runs in your family. So anyway, as I gained knowledge, I realized that so many people out here are hurting. So many people are struggling from addiction. So many people just feel like no one understands them. I know the feeling. So many people feel like they're going to be ridiculed. And let's be honest, society will ridicule you for being an addict. They shun you. They make you look like you're the worst thing on this planet. When in all actuality, you're just another human being that is going through something, battling a disease. It's not easy being an addict. It's not easy being a recovering addict. I know people who went sober for several years and then turned around and had a drink. And the next thing you know, they're right back down the rabbit hole. And one person I met that I knew previously went 8 years sober and decided to have a drink. And the next thing you know, I ran into her again and she was absolutely obliterated. And I almost came to tears because I used her as a means of hope for myself. I said, man, she did it, so I can do it. She did it, so I can do it. And to see her in that state, it really broke my heart. But it also opened up my eyes to how easy it is to fall back into that pattern. Now, I never really was, in my opinion, an addict of marijuana. I could smoke it for a couple of months, put it down for a year, pick it back up for a couple of months, put it down for 2 years. I just never felt like I was an addict of that. But the funny thing is, once I got sober and I had those fears of an urge of drinking again, I picked up marijuana. And I said, okay, I'll just do it here and there because I've never really had a problem with doing it here and there. However, that's not how it ended. I ended up being addicted to that as well. I was smoking weed every day. And if I wasn't smoking weed, I decided I'd get these edibles or I'd get the CBD with the THC in it. And I was drinking the drinks, eating the candy, eating the chips. Like it was so crazy how I just hopped off of one and went on to the other. So thankfully, because of my DWI, and yes, I said thankfully, because it forced my hand. It forced me to do the right thing. I got into a program where it's a zero tolerance program, substance free. And it forced my hand to not put anything in my body. And let me tell you something, it is the best feeling in the world. I promise you it is. Like my clarity is unreal. There was the first thing I noticed about myself after, being completely 100% sober from any substance was my vocabulary. My brain just opened up. Like my vocabulary came back. I was always an avid reader. My mother didn't play that. Like she was the type that did book reports at home. I said, what kind of ma'am? This is ridiculous. But that was her. She wanted her children to be educated. So she would do book reports at home off of the Berenstain Bears book, like the Berenstain Bears book. I said, ma'am, this is ridiculous. But I thank God for it because my vocabulary was crazy. And so I noticed that my vocabulary came back. I noticed clarity in my thoughts. My temperament had changed. I wasn't so angry. I wasn't so quick to snap. I wasn't so volatile. I was easygoing. I noticed that I cared more. I was more passionate. My children, I had way more patience. Whew, way more patience with my children. I just, and I thank God for that. I thank God for that. It's the best thing that happened to me was getting sober. And through my struggles, I said to myself, if I can help another person, just one person, my life was worth living. Everything that I've been through was worth it because I was able to assist another person. And I know there's many of you out there struggling today. I know there's many of you that are struggling right now, battling addiction, maybe even high at the moment or drunk at the moment. But I just want to encourage you to keep fighting. I quit so many times before I quit. Do not allow that to discourage you because you can do it. Nothing is impossible. The word impossible, if you break it down, says I'm possible. You are possible. You can make it happen. I just ask that you find something that you love, find something that you can focus on, but dig deep down in your soul and say, hey, this is what it's going to take for me to get back on track. And it's not going to be all butterflies and wildflowers. It's going to be some dark days. It's going to be some hard days. But mental fortitude is so important. And that's another reason why I chose to do this podcast is because there's so many different things that affect addiction, your upbringing, family tree. Sometimes it's a traumatic event that may have occurred that has messed you up for the rest of your life or so far in your life. And so it's important to me that we touch on many topics. This podcast isn't for me, like I stated before, it's it's your podcast. It's the people's podcast, because I want you all to hit me up through email, hit me up through chat, and let me know, like, hey, this is what I want to talk about. This is what I'd love to hear about. And I'll be more than happy to do it. I want to do this for you, but you're helping me as well. I don't want you to think that I'm, just gonna give, because I know that some of you beautiful minds out there have something to offer me. And I'm extremely grateful for this platform. I'm extremely grateful for this opportunity. I thank God for a second chance at life, because it got really scary. It got really scary for me at one point. I just didn't know whether I was going to be able to get out of alcoholism long enough to live. It was that bad. So I just pray that you stick with it. Log in when you have free time. I understand if you can't watch a full episode. I try to keep my episodes to 30 minutes. I understand if you can't watch a full episode, but at least log in for a little bit and allow something to penetrate your heart. Keep fighting. Don't give up. And I promise you, it'll get better for you. Hang in there. God bless.